Hi, guys! Today we're sharing 3 captivating stories about Karen, the neighbor you never want to have. Are you ready? Let's dive into the first story. When I bought my farm 3 years ago, I thought I'd found paradise. No neighbors, no noise, just endless open land, a small rustic house, and the freedom I had been craving for years. The farm was tucked away at the end of a long dirt road, with a padlocked gate at the entrance, and a dense tree line wrapping around the back. It was perfect. It was mine. At first, life was everything I'd hoped for. I spent my days working on the house, fixing fences and planting a small vegetable garden. I felt free, but that peace didn't last long. On the day I finished moving in, I met her, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the nearby HOA. She pulled up in a shiny SUV wearing a too-wide smile and carrying a plate of cookies. "Hi, welcome to the neighborhood," she said with an enthusiasm that felt forced. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA down the road. We like to keep the area looking nice." I smiled politely and told her I wasn't part of the HOA. Her smile didn't fade, but something in her eyes shifted. "Oh, of course," she said, her voice almost sing-songy. "But you know, it's always good to be a good neighbor." That phrase would come up again, and every time it would send a shiver down my spine. A few weeks later, I was outside fixing the old metal gate at the entrance to my driveway. It was rusted and worn, but I loved it because it gave me privacy. As I finished repainting it, I heard the familiar crunch of gravel. Karen was back, this time holding another plate of cookies. "I thought I'd bring you these," she said with that same bright smile. "Just a little welcome gift." I thanked her, but before I could retreat, she gestured to the gate. "You know," she said, tilting her head slightly, "some of the folks in our neighborhood were wondering why it's locked. It's such a beautiful piece of land. It seems a shame to keep it all closed off." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, it's my private property," I said calmly. "I like having my space." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Oh, of course, of course. I just meant that it's the kind of place people would love to walk around and enjoy, you know, as good neighbors." There it was again. I laughed politely and gave a vague answer about privacy. She nodded but didn't look satisfied. Before leaving, she added, "If you ever want to make improvements, the HOA has great resources. We're always here to help." I didn't think much of it at the time. Karen was a little pushy, sure, but I figured that was just her personality. I had no idea what she was planning. Months went by without incident. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I was clearing brush near the tree line at the back of my property when I heard voices. At first, I thought they were coming from the road, but as I moved closer, I saw them. 2 strangers walking along my field. "Excuse me," I called out, walking toward them. The pair froze, looking startled. One of them, a middle-aged woman, stammered, "Oh, we're so sorry. Karen said it would be fine. She told us you wouldn't mind if we took a quick walk around." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Karen said what?" "She said this was part of the neighborhood," the woman explained, looking embarrassed. "We just wanted to take a look." "This is private property," I said firmly. "Karen has no authority here. Please leave." They apologized and hurried off, but I was left furious and full of questions. Why would Karen tell people my farm was part of the neighborhood? Was this a misunderstanding, or was she up to something? A week later, I found a letter on my doorstep. Inside was a typed petition with Karen's name at the top, followed by dozens of signatures from her HOA members. The letter requested limited community access to my property, claiming it would benefit the neighborhood. I couldn't believe the audacity. My farm wasn't a public park, and I had no intention of turning it into one. Furious, I went straight to Karen's house, holding the petition in my hand. "Oh, hi there," she said, opening the door with that same sweet tone. I didn't waste time. "Care to explain this?" I asked, holding up the letter. She glanced at it and shrugged. "Oh, it's just something the neighbors wanted to do. No big deal." "No big deal?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're trying to pressure me into opening my land like it's some public park." Her smile disappeared. "I'm just trying to be a good neighbor," she said coldly. "But if that's how you feel, I guess there's nothing more to discuss." Her tone was so dismissive, but there was something in her eyes, like she already had another plan. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Trash appeared near the tree line. My tomatoes were trampled. Tire tracks showed up near the back gate, even though the cameras didn't catch anyone. Then, one day, I found another letter, this time claiming my fence was encroaching on HOA property. Enough was enough. I hired a surveyor who confirmed that my fence was well within my property lines. To my surprise, the survey also revealed that a row of bushes and a decorative sign from the HOA were actually on my land. Armed with this information, I hired an attorney. Together, we drafted a response demanding that the HOA remove their landscaping and stop harassing me. I also upgraded my security system, installing more cameras and motion-activated lights. The final nail in Karen's plan came when I discovered she had filed a request with the city council to annex my property into the HOA. She'd included fake complaints and unauthorized photos of my farm. I went public, posting everything online, security footage, survey results, and the petition. The local community was outraged. Even members of Karen's HOA turned against her when they learned she had used HOA funds for her scheme. At the city council hearing, Karen's lies unraveled. The council not only denied her request, but also launched an investigation into her conduct. Karen resigned in disgrace, and the HOA quietly removed their landscaping from my property. Now, I finally have the peace I dreamed of when I bought my farm. And Karen, she learned the hard way that you don't mess with someone's private property. While we're following the drama on this farm, another story is unfolding on a different farm, where yet another Karen has decided to prove she's in charge. But this time, things have escalated even further. When a young woman bought her dream farm, she imagined a peaceful and self-sustained life. The farm had everything she wanted: rolling fields, a small vegetable garden, and the freedom to grow her organic produce for herself and the local market. But that peace didn't last long. One morning, as she was planting seeds for her new herb garden, she noticed a woman walking down her driveway. The stranger had a clipboard in one hand and an air of authority that could only mean trouble. "Hello," the woman said with a bright smile. "I'm Karen, head of the Eco-Clean Committee for the nearby neighborhood." The woman raised an eyebrow, unsure what an Eco-Clean Committee was. Karen continued, "We've been monitoring local properties to ensure everyone is following proper environmental standards. Your farm has so much potential, but there are a few things we'd like to address to help you align with our vision for the area." Confused, the woman asked, "I'm sorry, what does this have to do with me? This is my private property." Karen's smile didn't waver. "Oh, we're not here to make demands. We're here to help. For instance, we recommend composting with our certified organic bins and using only HOA-approved fertilizers. And of course, we'll need to approve any greenhouse designs you might consider building in the future." The woman shook her head. "Thank you, but I don't need help. I already compost, and my plans are my business. This is my farm, not part of your HOA." Karen's smile thinned. "Oh, I see. Well, it's always good to be a good neighbor." With that, Karen left, but something about her tone left the woman uneasy. Over the next few weeks, Karen made her presence known. She began showing up unannounced, often with a small group of people she called her activists. They would stand at the edge of the property, pointing at various parts of the farm and whispering amongst themselves. One morning, the woman found a bright green flyer taped to her gate. It read, "Attention! This property has been flagged by the Eco-Clean Committee for failing to meet environmental guidelines. Immediate improvements are strongly encouraged." The woman's frustration grew. She crumpled the flyer and threw it away, but things only escalated from there. Karen and her activists started leaving helpful reminders on the property: bags of compost she didn't ask for, stacks of flyers with environmental tips, and even a booklet on how to design eco-friendly greenhouses. At first it was annoying, but harmless. Then Karen took things further. One afternoon, the woman spotted Karen and her group standing near her compost pile. They were rearranging it. "What are you doing?" the woman shouted, running over. Karen turned with that same unbothered smile. "We noticed your compost wasn't layered properly. We're just fixing it for you." "Get off my property!" the woman snapped. "I didn't ask for your help, and I don't need it." Karen looked hurt. "We're only trying to make sure your farm meets community standards." The way you're doing this could attract pests, and we wouldn't want that to reflect poorly on the area." The woman couldn't believe the audacity. "This is private property. Leave, now!" Karen reluctantly left, but the tension didn't stop there. A few weeks later, the woman received a letter from the local council. It was an official notice stating that her farm had been reported for violating environmental standards. The accusations included improper waste disposal, unsightly greenhouse plans, and failure to use approved fertilizers. The woman was furious. She knew exactly who was behind it. She hired an attorney and submitted proof that the claims were baseless. Still, the council informed her that multiple complaints had been filed, all by neighbors Karen had rallied. Karen wasn't done yet. She organized a public meeting at the local community center, inviting other residents to discuss the problematic farm. Flyers for the event claimed the farm was an environmental hazard and encouraged people to support the Eco-Clean Committee's efforts to restore balance to the community. One stormy night, the woman's security cameras caught Karen and her group sneaking onto the property. This time, they weren't leaving compost or flyers. They were dumping barrels of a suspicious liquid near the compost pile. The woman, watching the live feed from her phone, immediately called the police. Within minutes, flashing lights lit up the driveway and officers arrived to catch Karen red-handed. The barrels, marked with hazardous waste symbols, were confiscated for testing. Karen tried to talk her way out of it, claiming she was helping with an eco-cleanup, but the police weren't buying it. They arrested her on charges of illegal dumping and trespassing. The woman decided it was time to expose everything. She posted the security footage, letters, and Karen's flyers online, tagging local news outlets and community groups. The response was explosive. Neighbors were horrified to learn that Karen had been using committee funds to pay for her harassment campaign. Many of the people Karen had rallied admitted they felt pressured into supporting her. At a packed town hall meeting, the community voted to dissolve Karen's Eco-Clean Committee. The council also launched an investigation into Karen's activities, including her misuse of funds. Facing legal and public backlash, Karen resigned in disgrace. The woman, with the support of her attorney, sued Karen for defamation and emotional distress. Karen settled out of court, paying a significant sum and agreeing to a restraining order that kept her far from the farm. With Karen out of the picture, the woman's farm flourished. She turned the experience into something positive, creating a small community garden on her terms and inviting neighbors to learn about real, eco-friendly practices. Karen's name became a cautionary tale in the community, a reminder that some battles aren't worth fighting. Finally, the woman had the peace and freedom she had dreamed of, proving that no Karen can stand in the way of determination and justice. Well, let's see what's unfolding on the third farm with yet another Karen. It was a crisp autumn morning when a man arrived at his newly purchased farm, a dream he had chased for years. Surrounded by rolling hills and golden fields, the property felt like a haven, far removed from the noise of city life. The long gravel driveway, bordered by sturdy oak trees, ended at a solid iron gate. For him, the gate wasn't just a practical feature, it was a symbol of privacy, a barrier between his peaceful retreat and the outside world. That peace, however, didn't last long. The first knock on his door came just hours after he had settled in. Standing on his porch was a woman in her late 40s, dressed in a sharp blazer and holding a clipboard. Her smile was overly bright, and her eyes carried a hint of superiority. "Hello, I'm Karen, president of the HOA for the neighborhood just down the road," she announced. Without waiting for an invitation, she stepped closer, peering into the house. "Nice to meet you," he replied cautiously. Karen clasped her hands, her smile unwavering. "You've got such a beautiful property here. The community has been talking about how wonderful it is to have a new neighbor. We just wanted to stop by and offer a suggestion." "A suggestion?" he echoed, unsure where this was going. Karen nodded enthusiastically. "You see, your driveway is right near the entrance to our neighborhood. We've been thinking it might be a great idea to install a gate, a modern, secure one. It would improve safety for everyone." He frowned, his hand tightening on the doorframe. "This is private property," he said. "I don't see why my land needs a gate for your neighborhood." Karen's smile wavered but didn't disappear. "Oh, I completely understand your concerns, but think of it as a way to build goodwill. Being a good neighbor is so important." Her tone was sugary, but something about it set his nerves on edge. "I'll have to decline," he said firmly. Karen blinked, her smile frozen in place. "Well, think about it," she said before turning to leave. "We'll be in touch." The next few weeks passed without incident, but he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Karen wasn't finished. That suspicion was confirmed when he noticed a group of people standing near the entrance to his driveway one afternoon. Karen was at the center, gesturing animatedly as a few neighbors nodded in agreement. When he approached, Karen greeted him with the same forced cheer. "Oh, hello again! We were just discussing the history of the area. Did you know there used to be a public pathway running right through here? It's practically historic." "I don't recall anything like that being mentioned when I bought the property," he said, keeping his tone neutral. Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, these things don't always make it into the paperwork, but it's common knowledge around here. A lot of residents have fond memories of walking through these fields. It would be wonderful to reopen the path, perhaps with a gate to make it accessible for everyone." His patience was wearing thin. "There's no public pathway here. This is private property, and it's going to stay that way." Karen's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. Of course, but sometimes it's better to work with the community rather than against it. Just something to keep in mind." She left with her group, but he knew this wasn't the end. A week later, he found a folded piece of paper taped to his gate. It was a petition, signed by dozens of residents from the gated community, demanding that he allow a new access gate to be installed. The letter claimed it was for the safety and convenience of all. He crumpled the paper in frustration. This wasn't just annoying anymore, it was harassment. Determined to protect his property, he installed security cameras around the perimeter and added motion sensor lights near the driveway. Late one evening, as he reviewed the live feed from the cameras, he saw movement near the gate. Karen and a group of her supporters were there, armed with tools and a stack of metal poles. They were attempting to install a gate. Furious, he called the police. When the officers arrived, Karen was quick to put on her most convincing act. "We're simply trying to improve the neighborhood," she said, her voice oozing with fake sincerity. She held up a set of blueprints, waving them for emphasis. "See, this was all pre-approved. It's for the benefit of everyone." But her confidence faltered as the officers examined the documents. One of them raised an eyebrow. "These don't look official," he said, pointing out the lack of signatures and city approval stamps. Karen's group began shifting nervously, their earlier bravado fading. One of her supporters mumbled, "I thought you said everything was authorized, Karen." "It is!" Karen snapped, her smile slipping for the first time. "This is just a misunderstanding." The officers weren't convinced. They reviewed the footage the man had provided from his security cameras, which clearly showed Karen directing the unauthorized construction. The lead officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you and your group are trespassing on private property. You'll need to leave immediately." Karen tried one last time. "But this is about safety. Don't you see how much this benefits the community?" "Ma'am," the officer replied firmly, "you're not helping anyone by breaking the law." Karen and her group were escorted off the property, and she was issued a citation for trespassing. The look on her face as she climbed into her SUV was a mix of fury and humiliation, but the man knew this wasn't over yet. The next morning, the man decided to take matters into his own hands. He uploaded the security footage online, adding a detailed explanation of everything Karen had done. He included screenshots of the petition, photos of the materials Karen had tried to install, and the moment the police removed her from the property. The video quickly went viral. Comments flooded in from viewers who were outraged by Karen's audacity. Local news stations picked up the story, dubbing it the Gate War. Within hours, neighbors who had initially supported Karen began to backpedal. One of them commented publicly, "I had no idea Karen was lying about having approval. She pressured us into signing that petition." Others came forward, revealing that Karen had been using HOA funds to pay for the materials and had even bribed a local contractor to fast-track the installation. Karen's reputation crumbled overnight. The HOA called an emergency meeting to address the scandal. The once proud Karen sat in the back, avoiding eye contact, while angry residents demanded answers. One neighbor stood up and shouted, "You told us this was for our safety! You lied to everyone!" Another added, "You've been mismanaging our funds for years. Enough is enough." The man attended the meeting as well, presenting his evidence to the HOA board. With the video footage, the fake blueprints, and the misuse of funds exposed, Karen had no defense. By the end of the meeting, the board unanimously voted to remove Karen from her position as HOA president. She was also ordered to repay every cent she had taken from the HOA budget, a sum large enough to leave her visibly shaken. Karen's fall from grace was swift and absolute. She issued a public apology, though it was clear it had been written by her lawyer. Her statement read, "I deeply regret the misunderstandings that occurred and will work to rebuild trust with my community." Few people believed her sincerity. Meanwhile, the man's story continued to gain traction online. Support poured in from strangers who admired his determination to stand up for his rights. Locally, neighbors who had once been indifferent began reaching out to him, offering apologies and even friendship. One day, a group of neighbors stopped by his farm, not with demands but with baked goods and genuine smiles. "We're sorry for everything," one of them said. "If you ever need help with the farm, let us know." The man accepted their apology, realizing that not everyone had been complicit in Karen's schemes. With Karen out of the picture, the man finally felt a sense of calm. He reinforced the gate at the end of his driveway, installing stronger locks and additional security measures to ensure no one would try to interfere with his property again. The farm became everything he had dreamed of, a sanctuary where he could work the land and enjoy the quiet life he had always wanted. As for Karen, her name became a cautionary tale in the community. "Don't pull a Karen," people would say whenever someone got too pushy or overstepped their boundaries. In the end, the man's resilience and refusal to back down reminded everyone of an important lesson. No matter how loud or persistent someone like Karen might be, the truth and justice will always prevail.